Our first speaker is Leonard Baer. I'm actually reading what was given to me. Okay. Has given talks to various groups across the country on financial abuse of the elderly, including the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, AARP, and has testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Aging in Washington, D.C. As a practicing attorney, he has been selected for inclusion in the Bar Register of Preeminent Lawyers, a registry of the top 5% of all attorneys practicing in the United States. His previous experience was in the area of complex litigation, serving as Deputy Chief of the Major Crimes Division for the United States Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida. Mr. Baer has a featured blog, As I See It, on the internet magazine Age and Place, and practices in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, New York, and Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Baer. Thank you.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Am I too close?
You're fine.
And you read that beautifully, just as I wrote it, or as my... Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. And I was invited, well, first of all, it's like I know most of you. I have watched all the video casts of this ad hoc committee for the past several months. I actually came to a meeting in February. I've heard the discussions, and I understand that the purpose is really to make recommendations to the council regarding seniors, programs available to seniors, things that could be done or recommended that things should be done. And this is primarily the area that I practice in. And elder law is a very wide encompassing field of law. There are many, many different areas to it. One of the subsets, and what I'm really here to talk about, is a subset that I have kind of found myself in because of my background with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I was also a state prosecutor working in Janet Reno's office. I then went out and had my own defense practice. So I got a chance to see things that maybe other people don't normally see in the type of careers they have. I became involved with senior fraud, for financial exploitation of the elderly, no matter how you talk about it or what you call it, simply because I had a client call me several years ago. And that client had gotten caught up in a scam that ultimately took about $35,000 from he and his family. The anguish that it caused in his family, to his wife, to his children, was unbelievable. And the experience of working with that family, the experience of being with those people who became my friends, was something that I thought about and really said to myself at that time, this is something that, because of my own background, I probably can help people. And I was seeing more of it. That was a practice in North Carolina. That was a practice in the area where I have an office in Highlands, North Carolina. Not a big city, a small town, but all the same issues, because the demographics are not dissimilar to the demographics here in Palm Beach County. The things that I want to talk about tonight are really two recommendations. To talk about more about financial exploitation, about sexual abuse of the elderly, about emotional abuse. It's too wide and encompassing topic. So having seen the video casts and knowing what you're trying to do and accomplish, and I certainly applaud that, I want to focus in on two areas that I think are necessary. Part of them you may even see on the handouts that I know that Selena just gave. That is a blog that I write. I write that every 2 weeks about things that I think are important in the senior community. Sometimes they have humor to it. Sometimes I think they have humor and they don't. But the bottom line is that are things that I think are important. One of the things that I think have been missing in terms of the issue of senior abuse, and I'm going to generically call it senior abuse. And senior, of course, is a word of art. I mean, you start getting on the AARP list when you're 55 now. So it doesn't really matter how old. The senior is just a generic term. The statute in Florida calls it a vulnerable adult. It's someone who may be prone to abuse, someone who may be living alone, someone who is caretaking for a spouse that may be sick, has Alzheimer's disease. We either have experienced that, we know people who have done that, we know that situation. But one of the things that I think is missing from the recommendations, something that I really talked about a few weeks ago. I am local down here. I'm in Wellington. My office is in Wellington. I'm a member of the Wellington Rotary, the Western Business Alliance, and I spoke to the Western Business Alliance about 3 weeks ago. And obviously by its name, it's made up of business people. And I started talking about what you as business people should be noticing when people are coming into your offices. And I was talking to realtors, I was talking to people who were involved in the banking industry, financial services industry, insurance business, even a retailer, because he related to me an experience that he had in his store. He actually had he has an art gallery. But I was talking about what you, meaning those business owners, should be looking for when seniors come in if there seems to be something amiss. The business owner said to me after the talk, you know, we've never really heard that talk before. We've never really knew what to look for, and we never really knew who to call if we were to see that. And one of the things I want to emphasize tonight is I think there has to be more of an outreach, more of an educational program, more of a recommendation to business people to start to learn a little bit about elder abuse. Now, a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old in his business says, well, why would I have to? What does that have to do with me? I'm selling goods, or I'm selling this, or I'm doing this. It's because he's starting to see it more and more. It's happening more and more. If I were to tell you, and I'm sure you even know, that elder abuse is a pandemic, it's an epidemic. It's a $5 billion a year business just in the United States alone. And interestingly, California and South Florida are the two main focus points of what I call the scammers, the fraudsters. It's a problem. So when a business owner says, well, how does that involve me? This business owner who owned the art gallery said to me, you know, something, Mr. Baer, happened the other day in my store. I saw someone come in that was buying some artwork, and he was with someone who I believe to be his daughter. And during the course of the conversation, he said it was unbelievable, the abusive language that he was hearing from the daughter talking, in this particular case, to the father. Abusive, terrible. And this was this argumentative type of behavior. And you know, he said it was very obvious what the scenario is, what the social scenario is, what this man has to go through, whether he's living with his daughter or not, what's happening on the telephone, wherever they get together. He said to me, I didn't know what to do. He said, I knew that there was abuse there. And what was actually happening was that the daughter in this situation was trying to buy a significant piece of artwork, but of course, who was going to pay for that significant piece of artwork? And so he said to me, I think I really made a mistake. And I could tell by talking to him that he felt very badly. He said, I did nothing. He said, I did nothing. Well, I said to him, listen, more likely than not, whatever you could have done or should have done probably would not have made any difference or would not have impacted. I said, but here is a situation that you need to know. When business people, when bankers, when whatever the group of professionals that I talked about, or the business people or retailers, when you start to see these type of things, whether it be abuse, whether you see an elderly individual coming in with a caretaker, and you see that individual who is not dressed properly, doesn't look clean, doesn't look like they've been taking care of themselves or have anybody else taking care of themselves, you're looking at abuse. The laws are pretty clear. They're not, and one of the things that I passed out to you, do we need more laws? And that's always seems to be the fallback. Well, let's put more legislation on the books. Well, that'll cure this. And then, of course, we all know in real life, and we've all lived long enough to know that there are enough laws on the books. The laws are there. It's now, how do we interpret what's happening? What do we see? How do we enforce it? And what can we do when we see this issue? In the state of Florida, the Department of Social Services, the investigative portion of the Florida, let's say the law enforcement arm, happens to be a very, very effective. There's an 800 number. People have this 800. What I've told the people in these businesses, have next to you. What is the 800 number? What's the elder abuse hotline? And why is that? Because you can make a call, and actually you can make a call anonymously. You don't have to give your name, but I will tell you this, and Florida is probably one of the most progressive states. I don't see this in some of the other states that I practice in. Florida will investigate. The investigators will actually come out, even if the tip is anonymous. They will file reports, and if they see it, they will report it. Now, where will they report it to? They will either report it to the administrator of that particular bureau, or they could even, in fact, report it to the state attorney's office. Law enforcement, and I know that Diane Smith was here, I think, in March, and she is a spokesperson for the Palm Beach Sheriff's Department in this particular area. And I've talked to Diane before. They are becoming very reactive to this. 10 years ago, if we had this talk, probably 10 years ago, this ad hoc committee wouldn't have even existed, or the issue wouldn't have been of interest. Things have changed. There is a very reactive group that will pursue this, that will take a look at these issues. So a recommendation that I'd like to make, and hopefully, and I guess that Selena is the recipient of recommendations and the transmitter of these recommendations. I think there has to be more outreach, more educational programs, more seminars, more programs for business owners to start recognizing what elder abuse looks like. Right now, the only mandatory responders, meaning who has to report elder abuse, specifically, it's really out of the healthcare professions, where if they see something and they have a question about it, they are mandatory. They have the specific go-ahead to report what they consider to be abuse. There is no mandatory reporting for all of us. Doctors have to do it, like I said, in the healthcare business. But you know, it's interesting. I spoke with a doctor. This was in North Carolina, and I did a program and then did some training for a hospital where I am. The doctors are the first line to see this sometimes. They see not only the patient, the senior, but they also see some type of a caregiver, caretaker, relative, friend come in with them. They're the first people who see some of this type of abuse, and it was amazing to me that they intellectually recognized it, but they felt, well, it is what it is. Gee, it's just someone seemed to be a little bit bossy. As a matter of fact, that's what the doctor said to me when we had a discussion. Well, she just seemed to be bossy. Well, really, the reality is maybe bossy for the 15 minutes the doctor saw the patient. What do you think that brings to a different level when the patient, the father, the mother, whomever goes home? There has to be more outreach for this. It's a recommendation I'd like to make. Do more training, do more talking, do more writing, have seminars, but for the business people, for the 20, 30, and 40-year-old. They become the target, they become the focal point, they become the people that see this every single day. And what I'm hoping for is that a situation like my friend at the Business Alliance said to me, gee, I felt very badly when I didn't do something about it. Number two, and I know that there's a gentleman from the fire department waiting to speak here, and his is probably more important than mine, but let me make this other suggestion. I don't think we do, and this is one of the reasons I passed out an article about watching who's looking at you. I give a talk where I talk about how many eyes are on seniors when you're in various locations. Eyes you never see. When you're at Publix, when you're in a department store, when you're shopping any place, when you walk into a driveway, if you're living in a gated community, maybe not as badly if you're not living in a gated community. There are people watching. When you go to a restaurant, there are people watching. What are they watching for? They are watching for the vulnerable person. I come to this kind of a thing naturally. I have spent 30 years practicing, and I say that very, very loosely. I practice martial arts. I train in the martial arts. I love the martial arts. I can't make you all martial artists. I can't do that. But what martial arts has given me, and what I try to transmit in some of the talks I give, is awareness of what's out there, what you should be looking for, what you could be doing, what you should be doing, and what you're not doing. I'm not asking you to start beating someone up with a cane, although 2 weeks ago in the paper, a woman successfully did that. As a matter of fact, I showed the mugshot of the guy she beat up. You would have thought that he had played 4 quarters of football against the Boston Patriots. The guy looked terrible. The woman did a number on this guy. That doesn't always happen, though. But there are things that people can do. They should know what they can do and know how to handle various situations. I'm making this recommendation that there should be more of these type of programs. Programs to teach people some basic self-defense. And I am not talking, again, about taking a walker and starting to brain someone in a parking lot. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is to be aware what you can be doing. I said this to a client about 3 weeks ago. He was telling me that he didn't have the issue happen, but he felt that when he was walking to his car, he was being watched. Well, I said, Ed, let me ask you a question. Where were you parked? Well, he said, I was kind of parked pretty far from the store. I said, what time was this? Let's see, it was about 8:15. 8:15, and you're walking all the way down to the end of the parking lot. I said, do you think that sounds smart? He said, well, no. I said, did they have a valet parking there? He said, well, in fact, they did. I said, well, how much did it cost? He said, well, it cost $10. That's an awful lot of money, Mr. Baer. I said, would it have been a lot of money to have not spent if you had been attacked in the parking lot or attacked before you got into the car? Well, gee, I never really thought of it that way. You know, we're all getting older. We have to think about things a little bit differently. Becoming aware is something that I try to teach people what they can do, how they can react, how they should look, what they should not do. I think I passed out something that talked about what's in your wallet. I mean, how many times have we all seen that? You open up everything you own, including things you wouldn't like other people to see necessarily, but you open it up. These are things that I tell you, you're being watched. As a recommendation, and I'm hoping you make this recommendation to Selena, we need to have, I'll call them self-defense course. I really should call them self-awareness talks, trainings, discussions, because the older population is getting more. Every day, 10,000 people turn 65 and will so for the next 18 years. A lot of these people are going to come to South Florida. We are a mecca for elder abuse, for attacks, for assaults. I'm not saying we can wipe everything out. It's not going to happen. But if you or something that we recommend or can do can save a person from a lot of problems, I think what we all do here is very, very important. I'll take any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Can you be sued if, let's say, if you see something and you call something, or even a doctor or whomever, can you be turned around and be sued?
There are
because-
good Samaritan rules on the laws on the books now. The bottom line is, first of all, you can make these kind of recommendations or you can make these calls anonymously, and they'll still be followed up. So you don't necessarily have to give your name, your address, or your phone number, but they will still be received and followed through. Can you be sued? You know, I've been in the law business a long time. And one of the words that lawyers always say is a ham and cheese sandwich can be sued. You can sue anybody. Does it mean anybody's going to be successful? No. No. If you legitimately saw something, if you thought it was to the level that someone is being abused, I will tell you, I would defend you. You're not going to be sued. But if you were, you will be successful.
I have another question,
Surely.
if I may. Why is it so difficult for a state? Now, I worked in a nursing home in New York. Why is it so difficult for the state to be able, or the nursing home be able to sue the nursing home?
You mean the individual, the patient sue the nursing home?
Like a spouse or a child of somebody
Well,
in
I
the
tell
nursing
you,
home?
first of all, things are changing, but many times when a patient enters a nursing home or a hospital, they have to sign a contract. That contract, probably up until the last 2 years, mandated that any type of disagreement that the patient had with the nursing home had to go through what's called arbitration. That's a whole different type of lawsuit. It's a lawsuit that's always been in the best interest, really, of the hospital, the nursing home. It's not in front of a jury. It's not in front of a judge. So the difficulty that people had to sue was just there. Number two, it's always the cover-up. You're trying to show various things. You're showing the abuse of the patient, the bruises, the various things that you would see. It used to be more difficult. It is not as difficult. Now, again, I'm going to tell you that the nursing homes generally will hire as good a lawyer as they can possibly do, as they possibly can. But I will also tell you that in my experience, and even of late, because elder abuse is becoming so predominant an issue, that juries and judges are much more inclined to listen to their stories rather than to listen to the bull of the nursing home.
That's good.
Can I answer any other questions? Well, I want to thank you. Like I said, I hope some of these recommendations are helpful. I hope that some of these things can become part of the community, because I think it's important, and I think these are things that can and should be done.
Do we have the 800 number for the elder abuse?
Yeah, it's in the report. It's in our report.
Oh, okay.
It is
Raise one question.
1-800-962-2873.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Baer, we have one more question for you.
Sure.
You've talked mostly about physical abuse, but there's huge financial abuse, and it's going on here with the guardianship. I mean, that's been all over the paper about the corruption in our court system and the appointment of the guardians. And now there's a recent issue about the federal rules being changed on fiduciary responsibilities.
correct.
And that is a big concern, because now the rule is being changed that you don't have to put the best interest, financial interest of your clients ahead of your own commission, the money you make when you're doing deals.
Well,
So would you recommend that people be very much, part of their training, be very much aware when they're working with anyone concerning their finances, that they make sure they sign a contract that that person says they will serve as a fiduciary, which will at least give that client some legal emphasis if that person is not, if their financial person doesn't sign a fiduciary responsibility, you don't want them. And secondly, if they do sign it and cheat you financially, you'd have some stronger legal ground.
Well, first of all, financial exploitation, like I said before, there's a vast, I could spend half a day just talking about that, and have talked about that topic. I guess what you're talking about is really two things. The Department of Labor bill that was supposed to actually become law or in effect in April was to mandate that anybody selling financial services was now going to have a fiduciary responsibility where they didn't have that before. What that simply meant was that a salesperson, a financial advisor, could sell you a product, a life insurance product, an annuity product, the various type of products or financial products out there. It really only had to be, though, not in your best interest. It simply had to be, was it suitable for you? Yes, I need insurance. Well, instead of selling you the cheapest type of insurance that he could have, but that still would have protected you, he sold you the most expensive type of insurance. It was a suitable product, but it certainly wasn't in your best interests. It was his because he's going to get a larger commission. The DOL rule, which is now still being debated, by the way, it's not law yet. It's not being implemented right now. And again, with the current administration, I don't know where that's going to end up. But the DOL rule said that all financial professionals had to do what was in the best interest of the client. They are now fiduciaries, which means that they are liable. If they sold you the insurance product that was in their best interest, was the highest commission, but you didn't need that, now you had civil liability. Now you could litigate. You could get your money back. You could get damages. The guardianship program. As a lawyer, it's just, I was disgraced by the articles that appeared in the Herald, in the Palm Beach Post. The Herald, I used to live in Miami, the Palm Beach Post. I thought, first of all, the Post did a brilliant job. They actually won the Pulitzer for that piece. But what it uncovered was something so scandalous that it was unbelievable. Guardianship has always been a very, very difficult slope. Guardianship is a situation where someone loses all their rights to everything. When you go and get a guardianship and you go through that proceeding, if you are the person that someone is trying to seek guardianship of, you basically have lost all your rights and you will lose all your money. It's just that simple. If this isn't changed even more than it is, and it's gotten better because there's scrutiny on it. I'm not sure that it would have been as reactive if the Palm Beach Post didn't write those articles. But the bottom line is there's more scrutiny on it. Is it going to be better? Are things going to get better? Will there be less fraud there? You know, my concern is going to be that in 2 years it's old news. In 3 years, who cares? I don't know. I don't know. As long, though, as, again, it's the same thing. As long as the people, the families, the abused, or the families of the abused, make waves, you talk about it. You make a big deal about it. You talk to a newspaper. You talk to a lawyer that does this kind of work and is interested in protecting that client. Then there will be more changes made. But it is a disgrace. And again, as a member of the profession that kind of is involved in that, it was a major embarrassment to me. Anything else I can help you all with? Well, thank you.
Mr. Baer, we want to thank you so very much for sharing this information with us, and you've given us a lot of food for thought because you're talking to a group of seniors.
Well, it's a charming group of seniors, but I don't think Ms. Smith is qualified into our elite group yet. But as we all know, she'll get there. Oh, and this young lady on the end there. No, but you will be here. But take your time in getting here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.